Jack Morrison was running late again. Between his job as a mechanic and driving for a food delivery service at night, being a single dad to 8-year-old Tommy left little room for error. That rainy Tuesday morning, he was taking his usual shortcut to drop Tommy at school when it happened. The black Mercedes ahead of them skidded, flipped, and burst into flames. Tommy watched in fear as his dad pulled over and ran toward the burning car. Jack didn't think twice about the danger. He just knew someone needed help. He didn't know that saving the woman trapped inside would change everything. He didn't know she was a billionaire. He just did what was right. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 5 hours earlier, Jack's alarm had blared at 4:30 a.m. He'd allowed himself exactly one hit of the snooze button, a small luxury he couldn't really afford but needed for his sanity. The stack of bills on his kitchen counter wouldn't pay themselves, and his night shift delivering food had ended just 3 hours ago. The apartment was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the aging refrigerator. Jack moved carefully through the cramped space, avoiding the creaky floorboard outside Tommy's room. His son needed every minute of sleep he could get. The kitchen light flickered as he turned it on. Another item on his endless to-fix list. Opening the refrigerator, Jack pulled out eggs and the last of the milk. Tommy's lunch money was running low, but they could stretch it until Friday's paycheck. He started making breakfast, muscle memory taking over as his mind wandered to 3 years ago. Sarah had always been the morning person, dancing around their kitchen to silent music, making pancakes shaped like dinosaurs for Tommy. The cancer took her so quickly, 6 months from diagnosis to goodbye. Sometimes Jack still reached for her, side of the bed in the morning, expecting to feel her warmth. "Dad?" Tommy stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. At 8, he already had his mother's gentle spirit and understanding eyes. "You forgot to iron your uniform again." Jack looked down at his crumpled mechanic's shirt. "What would I do without you, buddy? Probably show up to work in your pajamas." Tommy grinned, pulling the iron and board from their spot behind the couch. It was their morning ritual now, Tommy ironing while Jack cooked. A kid shouldn't have to take on such responsibility, but Tommy had stepped up without being asked. "Mrs. Rodriguez said I could come over after school today," Tommy mentioned, carefully pressing the collar. "Her grandson Miguel got a new video game." Jack nodded, flipping the eggs. "Remember to finish your homework first. And no snacks. We're having dinner with Grandpa tonight." His father-in-law had been their rock after Sarah passed, watching Tommy when Jack picked up extra shifts. The morning sun began to peek through their single window, casting long shadows across the worn carpet. Jack placed a plate of eggs and toast in front of Tommy, trying not to notice how the boy automatically cut his food into small pieces, just like he used to do for Sarah in her final weeks. "Dad?" Tommy's voice was hesitant. "Miguel's having a birthday party at the arcade next weekend. He invited me." Jack's heart sank. Birthday parties meant presents, and presents meant money they didn't have. "We'll figure something out, buddy. Maybe we can make him something cool in the garage." Tommy's smile didn't quite reach his eyes, but he nodded. "That would be awesome. Miguel loves the robot pencil holder we made him last time." The bills on the counter seemed to mock Jack as he packed Tommy's lunch: a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and the last granola bar from the box. His son never complained about the repetitive meals or the hand-me-down clothes. Sometimes that made it even harder. Jack's phone buzzed, a text from his boss at the garage. Another mechanic had called in sick. They needed him to come in early. More hours meant more money, but also meant rushing Tommy to school instead of their usual walk. "Change of plans, kiddo. We need to hustle this morning." Jack grabbed his keys, then paused to straighten Tommy's collar, another habit he'd picked up from Sarah. "Got your homework? Reading log signed?" Tommy held up his weathered backpack, the same one they'd bought 2 years ago, held together now with careful stitching and determination. "All set. Race you to the car." As they climbed into Jack's old Honda, he caught Tommy sneaking his lunch money into the glove compartment. "Dad, I'm not really hungry at lunch anyway. Miguel always shares his chips with me. Jack's throat tightened. He started the car, pretending to focus on adjusting the mirrors to hide the tears threatening to form. His son shouldn't have to worry about money. Sarah would be heartbroken to see what their life had become, but they were making it work, one day at a time. The morning light painted the road ahead in shades of gold and promise. Jack took the familiar shortcut toward Tommy's school, his mind already calculating how many extra delivery runs he could fit in that night. He couldn't have known that in less than an hour, everything would change. That fate had finally decided to throw them a lifeline, wrapped in twisted metal and flames. For now he was just a father trying his best, navigating another morning in a life held together by love, hope, and sheer determination. The rain had started as a gentle mist, but quickly intensified into sheets of water that overwhelmed the wipers. Jack leaned forward, squinting through the windshield as they approached the curve where Maple Drive met the highway. Tommy sat quietly. Beside him, Thumb worrying the frayed edge of his backpack strap. "Almost there, buddy. Just 10 more minutes." Jack checked his watch. They'd still make it before the bell if traffic cooperated. That's when he saw it. The black Mercedes ahead was traveling too fast for the wet conditions. Jack watched in slow-motion horror as its tires hit a slick patch. The luxury car fishtailed, its driver overcorrecting in panic. Metal screamed against wet pavement as the Mercedes spun, flipped, and slammed into the guardrail. "Dad!" Tommy's cry snapped Jack into action. He pulled onto the shoulder, throwing the Honda into park. "Stay in the car!" Jack ordered, already moving. The acrid smell of gasoline hit him as he approached the wreck. Flames licked at the undercarriage, small but growing. Inside, he could see a woman slumped over the steering wheel, her blonde hair stained red. The driver's side door was crumpled shut. Jack circled to the passenger side, heart pounding. The handle wouldn't budge. Without thinking, he stripped off his mechanic's shirt, wrapped it around his elbow, and smashed the window. Glass rained. Down as smoke began pouring from the engine. The woman stirred, moaning softly. Her seatbelt was jammed, the burning smell growing stronger by the second. "I'm going to get you out," Jack promised, reaching for his pocket knife. The seatbelt. Material was thick, but the blade was sharp. 3 seconds felt like 3 hours as he sawed through it. The flames were spreading now. Jack could feel their heat on his face as he maneuvered himself halfway through the broken window. His hands found purchase under her arms, and he pulled. She was surprisingly light, but awkwardly positioned. Her designer shoe caught on something, and he heard fabric tear as he finally freed her. They fell backward together onto the wet pavement, rolling away from the car. Not a moment too soon, there was a whoosh as the flames found the gas tank. The heat blast knocked them another few feet. Jack covered the woman's body with his own. As debris rained down, when he looked up, Tommy was running toward them, his face pale but determined. In the distance, sirens wailed. "She's breathing," Tommy reported, kneeling beside them. "I called 911, just like you taught me." The woman's eyes fluttered open, startlingly blue against her blood-streaked face. She tried to speak, but only managed a weak cough. An expensive-looking leather wallet had fallen from her car during the rescue. Tommy picked it up, holding it carefully away from the rain. "Try not to move," Jack advised, checking her for obvious injuries. His first aid training from the garage was basic, but it was better than nothing. "Help is coming." Her hand found his, squeezing with surprising strength. "Thank you," she managed before her eyes closed again. The next few minutes were a blur of emergency vehicles and urgent voices. Paramedics swarmed around them, efficiently transferring the woman to a stretcher. One of them tried to check Jack for injuries, but he waved them off. "Sir, we need your statement." A police officer appeared with a notepad. "And we'll need contact information for our report." Jack glanced at his watch and swore softly. "Tommy's already late for school. I need to go." The officer nodded, understanding. "But please stop by the station later today." As they walked back to their car, Tommy handed him the wallet. "We should make sure she gets this back." Jack tucked it into his pocket, not noticing the platinum credit cards or the business cards identifying Clare Bennett as CEO of one of Seattle's largest tech companies. His mind was already on Tommy's missed morning classes and the extra shift he'd have to explain away at the garage. They drove the rest of the way to school in thoughtful silence. Just before Tommy got out, he turned to his father. "Mom would be really proud of you." Jack's throat tightened. "Thanks, buddy. Have a good day, okay?" As he watched Tommy walk into school, Jack's adrenaline finally began to fade. His arms ached, and he could feel cuts on his hands from the broken glass. The wallet in his pocket seemed to burn with unasked questions, but he had no time for questions. He was already an hour late for work, and bills didn't pay themselves. Jack pointed his car toward the garage, unaware that his ordinary life had just taken an extraordinary turn. The burned leather wallet in his pocket was about to become a ticket to a future he could never have imagined. The emergency room buzzed with controlled chaos. Jack sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, still wearing his smoke-stained undershirt, waiting for news about the woman he'd pulled from the wreck. He'd dropped Tommy at school, called in late to work, and found himself drawn back to the hospital. Something about leaving without knowing if she'd be okay felt wrong. A nurse had given him a visitor badge an hour ago, marking him as guest of Clare Bennett. The name meant nothing to him then. He turned the wallet over in his hands, its leather scarred from the accident. He should probably give it to the nurses at the desk. "Mr. Morrison?" A doctor in crisp scrubs approached. "Ms. Bennett is asking." "Oh, for you." Jack blinked in surprise. "She's awake, and remarkably lucky. Some cuts, bruises, and a mild concussion. Thanks to you, that's all." They walked through sterile corridors to a private room. Inside, the woman from the crash sat propped up against pillows, her blonde hair now clean of blood and falling in elegant waves. Despite the hospital gown and bandages, she carried an air of unmistakable sophistication. "My hero." She smiled, extending her hand. "Clare Bennett, though you probably knew that from my wallet. Jack Morrison. And no, actually, haven't looked." "Inside." He handed the wallet to her. "My son Tommy picked it up from the scene. We wanted to make sure you got it back." Claire's eyes softened at the mention of Tommy. "The brave young man I saw running toward us. How old is he?" 8. Jack shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of his disheveled appearance in the luxurious private room. "Please sit." Claire gestured to a chair. "The doctors tell me another minute in that car." She trailed off, then met his eyes directly. "I owe you my life." "Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't have. 3 cars passed by before you stopped." Her voice carried quiet certainty. "I'd like to help you, Jack. Some kind of reward." "That's not necessary." Jack stood abruptly. "I should get to work. I'm glad you're okay." "Wait." Claire started to rise, then winced. "Take care of yourself, Miss Bennett." Jack nodded politely and left, the visitor badge burning in his pocket like a token from another world. In the parking lot, his phone buzzed with texts from his boss about the missed morning shift. He'd have to pull a double tomorrow to make up for it. The thought of his tight schedule and mounting bills pushed the memory of Claire's elegant presence from his mind. But fate wasn't finished with Jack Morrison yet. Across town, in her hospital room, Clare Bennett was already making calls. Her assistant arrived within the hour, bringing a laptop, fresh clothes, and a stack of newspapers. Every local outlet had covered the crash. "Mystery Hero Saves Tech CEO," read one headline. Another showed a blurry photo of Jack shielding her from the explosion. "Find him," Claire instructed, her fingers tracing the simple visitor badge he'd left behind. "And get me everything you can about Jack Morrison and his son." The assistant nodded, already typing. "The board's been calling. They want to know about the Singapore merger. That can wait." Claire's voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "This is more important." After everyone left, Claire sat alone in her hospital room, thinking about the way Jack had dismissed any idea of reward. In her world of corporate takeovers and strategic marriages, Genuine selflessness was as rare as a desert rain. Her phone buzzed, probably another board member or concerned investor. She ignored it, remembering instead the gentle way Jack had spoken about his son. There had been something in his eyes, a depth of caring that no amount of money could buy. The painkillers were starting to make her drowsy, but Claire fought sleep. Her assistant would have a full report by morning. Jack Morrison thought he could walk away from this intersection of their lives, return to his world, while she returned to hers. He was wrong. Claire Bennett hadn't built a tech empire by letting opportunities slip away. And something told her that Jack Morrison and his son might be the most important opportunity she'd ever encountered, not for her business, but for her life. She drifted off to sleep as the sun set outside her window, dreaming of kind eyes and gentle hands, of smoke and rain and second chances. The next morning hit Jack like a freight train. His muscles screamed from yesterday's rescue, and he'd gotten in late from his delivery shift. But Bills didn't care about heroics, so he dragged himself to the garage by 6. There he is, Seattle's finest. Rico, his fellow mechanic, waved a newspaper. Your famous Hermano. Jack grabbed the paper. There he was on page 3, carrying Claire from the wreck. The photo was grainy, but Tommy would love it. The article called him a mysterious good Samaritan. Famous doesn't fix transmissions, their boss, Mike, called from under a Subaru, but his gruff voice held pride. Morrison, take the Honda in. Bay 2. Owners complaining about the timing belt. Jack dove into the familiar work, letting the rhythm of repairs wash away thoughts of hospital rooms and elegant CEOs. He'd missed yesterday's morning shift, so he had to make up the hours. The schedule on the wall showed him working straight through the weekend. During his lunch break, he checked his phone. 3 missed calls from unknown numbers, probably reporters. He deleted them without listening to the messages. Tommy had texted, My teacher showed the class the newspaper. Everyone thinks you're a superhero. Jack smiled, typing back, Only on Tuesdays. Remember, Grandpa's picking you up today. The afternoon brought a steady stream of customers, each one seeming to recognize him. An old woman pressed cookies into his hands. A businessman tried to tip him $20. Jack refused as politely as he could, retreating beneath cars, where only engines could see him. You should milk this man, Rico advised, helping him with a stubborn alternator. Get yourself on the morning shows, maybe start a GoFundMe. Jack tightened a bolt with more force than necessary. I did what anyone would do. End of story. But it wasn't the end. More reporters showed up at the garage. Mike chased them away, but their questions lingered. Who was the mystery hero? What made him risk his life for a stranger? Was there a connection to the wealthy CEO? By closing time, Jack's back ached and his hands were black with grease. He checked his delivery app. Tonight's route would take him near the hospital. For a moment he thought about stopping by, seeing how Claire was doing. He shook off the impulse. Their worlds had touched briefly, like stars crossing paths in the night. Now everything could go back to normal. He picked up Tommy from his father-in-law's house. The boy was bursting with excitement. Miguel's mom says you should run for mayor, Tommy reported, bouncing in his seat. And Mrs. Rodriguez lit a candle for you at church. No candles needed. Buddy, I'm fine. Jack ruffled his son's hair. How about pizza tonight? I got a good tip on my last delivery run. They stopped at their favorite local place, sharing a small pepperoni and stories about their day. Tommy had aced his math test. Jack had fixed a car that made a sound like angry robots fighting. For a few precious minutes, life felt perfectly ordinary. But as they walked to their car, Jack noticed a sleek black SUV across the street, its tinted windows reflecting the pizzeria's neon sign. Something about it raised the hair on his neck. The same vehicle had been parked near the garage earlier. Ready for homework? He asked Tommy, trying to sound casual as he hurried them home. Can we work on it while you do deliveries? Tommy's voice was hopeful. I promise I'll be quiet. Jack's chest tightened. His 8-year-old son shouldn't Have to spend evenings in the back of a car while his father delivered food to strangers. Sarah would be so disappointed. Not tonight, bud. You need proper sleep. He helped Tommy with fractions until the boy's eyes grew heavy. After tucking him in, Jack sat at their small kitchen table, sorting bills. The rent was due next week. Tommy needed new shoes. The car insurance was about to lapse. Outside, a car door slammed. Jack parted the curtains just in time to see the black SUV pulling away. Something was coming. He could feel it in his bones like the pressure drop before a storm. But Jack Morrison had weathered storms before. Whatever happened, he would protect his son and the simple life they'd built. He just didn't know yet how impossible that would prove to be. Claire Bennett didn't like hospitals, but she despised weakness even more. 3 days after the accident, she was already conducting video meetings from her private room, much to her doctor's disapproval. Her laptop displayed quarterly reports and merger documents, but a separate window held something far more interesting, everything her team had discovered about Jack Morrison. He's a widower, her assistant Diana reported, scrolling through notes. Wife died of cancer 3 years ago. Works as a mechanic at Mike's Auto Service, plus evening shifts for various delivery apps. Son Tommy is 8, excellent student. Despite their financial challenges, no criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Owns a small apartment on the east side, currently behind on rent. Claire touched the scar on her forehead, still fresh from the accident. The garage. What's their financial situation? Struggling. The owner, Mike Peterson, is good-hearted but terrible with books. They'll probably close within the year unless something changes. Through the window, Claire could see the same black SUV that had been following Jack. Her security team was thorough, if not exactly subtle. The latest report showed him working doubles at the garage, then delivering food until midnight. His son often stayed with a father-in-law or elderly neighbor. He hasn't cashed in on any of this, Diana noted. 3 morning shows have tried to book him. 2 newspapers want exclusives. He's turned them all down. Of course he has. Claire smiled, remembering Jack's discomfort in her hospital room. In her world of corporate sharks and social climbers, his genuine modesty was fascinating. Her phone buzzed, another board member demanding updates on the Singapore merger. Claire ignored it, focusing instead on a photo of Jack and Tommy at a school science fair. The boy had his father's gentle eyes and determined chin. The private school near his apartment, Claire mused. What's their scholarship situation? Diana raised an eyebrow. You're not thinking of just research for now. But Claire's mind was already spinning possibilities. She'd built her fortune by recognizing potential others missed. And something about Jack Morrison radiated untapped potential. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Harrison entered, frowning at her laptop. Ms. Bennett, you need rest. I need to get back to work. Claire closed the computer anyway. Her head was throbbing. When can I leave? Tomorrow, if you promise to take it easy. He checked her vitals. You're lucky to be alive. That car could have... But it didn't. Claire's voice was firm. Thanks to Jack Morrison. After the doctor left, Claire stood carefully, testing her balance. The physiotherapist had cleared her for short walks. She made her way to the window, watching Seattle's endless rain paint patterns on the glass. Her whole life, Claire had moved with purpose, building her company from a startup to a tech giant, navigating boardroom politics, managing her family's expectations, but lately it all felt hollow. The accident had shown her how quickly everything could end, how little her wealth meant in those crucial moments. Diana returned with more files. There's something else. His late wife. She was working on a children's book before she died. Illustrations and everything, never published. Claire examined the scanned drawings, whimsical creatures teaching children about courage and kindness. Raw talent shone through the simple lines. Find out if he still has the originals. Claire, Diana's voice softened. Are you sure about this? The board is already nervous about your focus since the accident. If they think you're getting emotionally involved with some random... He's not random. Claire's tone ended the discussion. He's the man who saved my life, and I'm going to find a way to save his, whether he wants me to or not. Later that night, unable to sleep, Claire watched footage from traffic cameras near the crash. Frame by frame, she studied Jack running toward her burning car while others drove past. No hesitation, no thought of reward, just pure instinctive courage. Her phone lit up with a message from her security team. Jack was finishing his delivery shift, his old Honda carrying him through rain-slicked streets. His son was asleep in the back seat, homework spread across his lap. Claire's chest tightened. An 8-year-old shouldn't have to spend his nights like that. She thought of her own childhood, private schools, summer homes, every advantage money could buy. And yet somehow, this struggling single father had raised a boy who already showed more character than most adults she knew. Tomorrow, she would be discharged. Tomorrow, she would set her plan in motion. Jack Morrison thought he could go back to his quiet life. But Claire Bennett had other ideas. She just had to find the right way to help someone who refused to be helped. She fell asleep planning, dreaming of burning cars and brave mechanics, of second chances and new beginnings. Outside her window, Seattle's rain kept falling, washing away the old and nourishing seeds of change yet to bloom. A week after the accident, the bell above the garage's door chimed. Jack rolled out from under a Chevy, wiping his hands on a shop rag. He froze when he saw Clare Bennett standing in the entrance, looking impossibly elegant among the tools and motor oil. "Miss Bennett," he quickly pulled his work shirt over his grease-stained undershirt. "Is everything okay? Please, call me Claire." She moved through the garage like she belonged there, despite her designer clothes and perfect hair. "I wanted to thank you properly. Have coffee with me?" Jack glanced at the clock, then at Mike, who was practically shoving him toward the door. "Go," his boss mouthed. "Take lunch." The coffee shop around the corner was a far cry from the high-end cafes Claire usually frequented, but she settled into a worn booth like it was a 5-star restaurant. Jack ordered plain coffee. She chose a cappuccino. "How are you feeling?" he asked, noticing the nearly healed cut on her forehead. "Better. Doctors say I can return to work next week." She studied him over her cup. "But I didn't come here to talk about me. Tell me about Tommy." The mention of his son transformed Jack's face. "He's amazing, too smart for his own good sometimes. Wants to be an inventor or an artist or both. Changes every week." "Like his mother?" Claire's voice was gentle. Jack's smile faded. "How did you—" "I wanted to know more about the man who saved my life." She reached into her bag, pulled out a familiar sketchbook. "Your wife was talented." Jack stared at Sarah's unfinished children's book, emotions warring on his face. "Where did you get that?" "Your father-in-law. He thought you should have it back but couldn't bear to upset you." Claire slid the book across the table. "The illustrations are beautiful." Jack's fingers traced the cover. "Sarah always dreamed of publishing it. But then she got sick and the medical bills—" He cleared his throat. "Thank you for returning this." "I'd like to help, Jack." Claire leaned forward. "Not because I feel obligated, but because—" "Miss Bennett, Claire." Jack's voice was firm. "I appreciate the thought, but we're doing fine." "Are you?" Her blue eyes held his. "Working 2 jobs, Tommy spending nights in your car during deliveries, falling behind on rent?" Jack stood abruptly. "You had no right to investigate my life." "You're right." Claire remained seated, calm. "But I did it anyway, because I see something in you and Tommy, something rare. Let me help. Not with charity, but with opportunity. We don't need—" "The garage is failing." Her words stopped him. "Mike's a good mechanic, but a terrible businessman. Within a year, you'll be looking for work. Unless—" Jack slowly sat back down. "Unless what?" "I have a proposal, one that benefits everyone." She pulled out a folder. "But first, I'd like to meet Tommy, properly this time, not through a car window." As if on cue, the coffee shop door opened. Tommy burst in, followed by an apologetic Rico from the garage. "Sorry, Jefe," Rico shrugged. "Kid heard his dad was having coffee with the lady from the accident. No stopping him." Tommy approached their table, suddenly shy. Claire smiled warmly. "Hello, Tommy. I hear you want to be an inventor." The boy's eyes lit up. "Did Dad tell you about my robot drawings?" "Not yet, but I'd love to see them." Claire moved over, making space in the booth. "I know something about robots myself. My company makes them." Jack watched in amazement as his son and Claire bent their heads together, discussing servo motors and artificial intelligence. Tommy pulled out his sketchpad, Claire offering suggestions with genuine interest. The afternoon sun painted them in warm light, creating a picture of possibilities Jack hadn't dared imagine. "Dad," Tommy exclaimed, "Claire says there's a robotics program at the Science Center. Can we go?" Before Jack could form the gentle no that expenses required, Claire spoke. "I'm a board member there. They're always looking for young minds to test their new exhibits. Would you like to be their official product tester?" Tommy's eyes grew huge. Jack opened his mouth to protest, but something in Claire's expression stopped him. This wasn't charity. This was someone who saw his son's potential and wanted to nurture it. "Think about my proposal," Claire said softly, as Tommy chattered about robots. "Not for me, for him." Jack looked at his son's excited face, at Sarah's. Book on the table, at the hope blooming in a corner booth of a simple coffee shop. Sometimes, he realized, accepting help took more courage than giving it. "I'll think about it," he promised. And for the first time since Sarah died, the future felt wider than the narrow path of survival he'd been walking. The garage felt different the next morning. Claire's proposal sat in Jack's back pocket like a live wire, crackling with possibility. She wanted to invest in Mike's auto service, modernize it, expand it into a full-service center. Mike would keep operational control, but with proper business management and new equipment. "You're crazy if you don't take it," Rico said during their lunch break. "Did you see the numbers she ran?" Jack had seen them. They made his head spin. But it wasn't just about the garage. Claire had also mentioned a small business management course at the local college, suggesting Jack had a natural head for leadership. A familiar black car pulled into the lot. Claire emerged, carrying takeout bags that definitely didn't come from any restaurant in their neighborhood. Today she wore jeans and a casual blazer, still elegant, but less boardroom, more Saturday. "Brunch. I thought we could discuss details over lunch," she announced, setting up containers on a clean workbench. "I brought enough for everyone." Mike emerged from his office, drawn by unfamiliar aromas. Soon the whole crew was gathered around, eating Thai food that cost more than their usual weekly lunch budget combined. Claire fit into their group with surprising ease, laughing at Rico's jokes, discussing classic cars with Mike. "Lady knows her engines," Mike muttered to Jack, "and her business. Maybe we should hear her out." After lunch, Claire pulled a silk scarf from her bag, somehow having avoided getting a single grease stain on her clothes. The scarf caught on a rough edge of the workbench, leaving a small tear. She shrugged it off with a smile, but Jack carefully folded it and tucked it away. "To repair later." "Tommy's at the Science Center," Claire mentioned as they cleared up. "Diana's showing him the robotics lab. I hope that's okay. Your father-in-law said he was free this afternoon." Jack should have been annoyed at her presumption. Instead, he found himself grateful. Tommy had been talking about nothing but robots since their coffee shop meeting. "He'll love that," Jack admitted, "but you don't have to." "I want to." Claire's voice was firm. "That boy has an incredible mind. He deserves every opportunity to develop it." The afternoon brought a steady stream of customers. Claire sat in the office with Mike, going over books and possibilities. Jack caught fragments of their conversation between oil changes and brake jobs, small business loan programs, apprenticeship opportunities, community outreach initiative. Around 4, Tommy burst into the garage, eyes shining. "Dad, I helped program a real robot arm, and I met Dr. Rodriguez. He's designing prosthetic limbs that work with your brain, and he said I asked really good questions." Jack watched his son demonstrate robotic movements, joy radiating from every gesture. He couldn't remember the last time Tommy had been this excited about anything. Think he had fun. Clare appeared beside him, her smile soft. "Thank you," Jack said quietly, "for giving him that experience. It's just the beginning." She touched his arm lightly. "Jack, I know you're worried about accepting help, but this isn't charity. It's investment in the garage, in Tommy's future, in—" She hesitated. "In possibilities." Their eyes met. Something electric passed between them, making Jack's heart skip. He stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "I should get Tommy home. Homework to do." "Of course." Was that disappointment in her voice? "But first," she pulled out an envelope. "The Science Center is hosting a gala next month. Donors, inventors, the whole robotics team. Tommy would love it. Claire." The invitation looked expensive, just sitting in his hand. "As my guests," she added quickly. "Both of you. Tommy can meet more scientists. And you," her smile turned playful, "you own a suit, right?" Before Jack could answer, Tommy appeared with a robot schematic he'd drawn. Claire knelt to examine it, asking questions that made the boy beam with pride. They looked right together, Jack thought, like pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known was incomplete. Later that night, after Tommy was asleep, Jack found Claire's torn scarf in his pocket. He sat at the kitchen table, carefully stitching the delicate silk with the same patience he used on Tommy's clothes. The repair would never be perfect. The fabric was too fine, his hands too rough with calluses. But as he worked, Jack realized something. Maybe that was the point. Maybe life wasn't about keeping worlds separate, but about finding beauty in their collision. Like silk and motor oil, like science centers and auto shops, like a billionaire CEO and a mechanic sharing Thai food over a workbench. He looked at the gala invitation on the table. Tommy would need a suit too, and somewhere, in the back of his closet, buried under years of practical choices, Jack's old dress clothes waited for a reason to see light again. The week before the gala, Claire appeared at Jack's apartment with 2 garment bags and an uncertain smile. "I hope this isn't overstepping," she said, holding them out, "but I thought you and Tommy might need these." Jack started to protest, but Tommy was already unzipping his bag, revealing a perfectly sized suit in deep blue. "Cool! It looks like what Dr. Rodriguez wears." "You can't," Jack began. "I can, and I did." Claire's voice was gentle but firm. "Consider it a loan if it makes you more comfortable. The boys' store has a great return policy." She'd brought them to life, Jack realized. In the 3 weeks since their coffee shop meeting, the garage had transformed. New equipment arrived daily. Mike's scheduling system went digital. Even Rico was taking night classes in advanced diagnostics. But it wasn't just the business. Claire had become a fixture in their lives, dropping by with lunch, taking Tommy to science workshops, bringing Jack management books that somehow always addressed exactly what he was struggling with that week. "Try them on," she urged. "The tailor's on standby if we need adjustments." In his bedroom, Jack slipped into the charcoal grey suit. The fit was impeccable, the material finer than anything he'd ever worn. He emerged to find Tommy proudly showing Claire his new robotic sketches. "Dad!" Tommy bounced up. "You look like James Bond." "He does, doesn't he?" Claire's eyes met Jack's in the mirror, and something warm flickered between them. Jack cleared his throat. "Speaking of the garage, I found your scarf." He retrieved it from his dresser. "I tried to fix it." Claire took the silk scarf, running, her fingers over the nearly invisible repair. "Jack, this is beautiful work. Where did you learn to sew like this?" "Sarah taught me." He sat beside them on the couch, memories softening his voice. "After she got sick, I had to learn to mend Tommy's clothes, fix buttons. She was so patient, showing me even when she barely had strength to hold the needle." Tommy pulled out the family photo album, the one they rarely opened anymore. "This was Mom," he said, showing Claire a picture of Sarah in her garden, laughing at the camera. "She was beautiful," Claire said softly. "You have her smile, Tommy." They spent the next hour going through photos. Jack found himself sharing Stories he hadn't told in years. Sarah teaching Tommy to walk, their disastrous attempt at camping, the day she finished the illustrations for her book. "She never got to color them," Tommy said, pulling out the sketchbook. "But I remember what colors she wanted to use. She told me while—" Clare wrapped an arm around him as his voice caught. Jack watched them, his heart doing strange things. In his chest, when was the last time Tommy had talked about Sarah so openly? "You know," Clare said carefully, "I know some children's book editors. If you wanted to finish her work, Tommy, add the colors she chose." Tommy looked at Jack, hope warring with uncertainty. Jack nodded, his throat tight. "She'd like that, buddy. She'd like that a lot." Later, after Tommy went to bed, Clare lingered by the door. "Thank you for sharing her with me. Thank you for making it easy to talk about her." Jack hesitated. "Clare, all of this? The garage, the suit, Tommy's classes? Why?" She touched the repaired scarf around her neck. "Because some people show you who they are in a single moment, running into a burning car, fixing a torn scarf, raising a son with such gentle strength. You're extraordinary, Jack Morrison. You just needed someone to see it." Their eyes met, and for a moment the air crackled with possibility. Clare took a small step forward. Jack's heart thundered. Then a car honked outside, breaking the spell. Clare stepped back, smoothing her jacket. "The Gala's at 7 on Saturday. A car will pick you up at 6:30. We can drive ourselves," Jack protested automatically. Clare's smile was fond. "I know you can, but sometimes it's nice to let someone else take the wheel." After she left, Jack stood in his living room, surrounded by evidence of how thoroughly she'd woven herself into their lives. The suits hanging by the door, Tommy's robotics papers spread across the coffee table, Sarah's book open to a page of uncolored illustrations, waiting for their son to fulfill her vision. Change, Jack realized, didn't always announce itself with burning cars and dramatic rescues. Sometimes it came quietly, in repaired scarves and shared photographs, in suits that felt like new possibilities, in hearts opening slowly to the idea that love could bloom more than once in a lifetime. The morning of the gala brought unwelcome surprises. Jack was finishing a transmission repair when Rico rushed in with a tabloid. "Tech Billionaire's Secret Romance with Blue-Collar Hero" splashed across the front page. Below were photos. Clare bringing lunch to the garage, Jack and Tommy at the science center, Clare leaving his apartment in the evening. "Man, you're famous!" Rico grinned, but Jack felt sick. The article painted Clare as a wealthy woman slumming it, him as an opportunistic gold digger, and somehow managed to make their time with Tommy seem calculated and exploitative. His phone buzzed. Clare calling. Before he could answer, Mike appeared with a grim expression. "Channel 4's outside. They want a statement about your relationship with Miss Bennett." Jack's next call was from Tommy's school. Other parents had seen the article. Some were asking questions about Tommy's new science center privileges. The principal was concerned about the attention. "Dad," Tommy's voice was small, "kids are saying weird things about you and Clare, and Mom." Jack's hands tightened on the phone. "I'll pick you up early, buddy. Just hang in there." When he arrived at the school, a reporter was already in the parking lot. Jack hustled Tommy to the car, ignoring questions about Clare Bennett's influence and sudden lifestyle changes. "Is this why Miguel's mom cancelled our sleepover?" Tommy asked as they drove home. Before Jack could answer, his phone lit up with an unknown number. He answered on speaker, expecting another reporter. Instead, a cultured male voice said, "Mr. Morrison, I represent the Bennett family's interests. We'd like to discuss your recent association with Clare." "Not interested." Jack hung up, but the damage was done. Tommy's face had fallen. "Are we in trouble?" "Nobody. Some people just don't understand." His phone buzzed again. Claire's face appeared on the screen. "Jack, I'm so sorry." She sounded breathless. "I'm in damage control meetings. My PR team is handling it. Just don't talk to anyone until—" "PR team." Jack pulled into their parking spot. "Clare, They're at Tommy's school. They're calling him the poor charity case in your romance redemption story. A pause. Let me send a car for you both. You can stay at my place until this dies down. That would only make it worse. Jack watched Tommy trudge upstairs, shoulders slumped. Maybe we should... Don't, her voice cracked. Don't. Pull away. Not now. A sleek Mercedes pulled up beside them, Claire's lawyer from earlier. Jack ended the call. Inside their apartment, Tommy went straight to his room. Jack found the garment bags hanging by the door, the suits that had seemed like such possibilities. Yesterday, now they felt like costumes in someone else's play. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Diana from Clare's office. The lawyer again. Local news. Even Sarah's parents asking if the tabloid stories were true. Around 4, a knock at the door revealed Rico with a stack of mail. They're piling up at the garage, mostly reporters. Cards, but he handed Jack a thick envelope. This came special delivery. Inside was a contract from a rival auto service chain offering to buy out Mike's garage and Jack's employment contract for a substantial sum. A note was attached. Let's give Miss Bennett her publicity story with a different ending. Jack's hands shook as he shoved the contract into a drawer. Through Tommy's door, he could hear his son talking on the phone. I know, Miguel, but Claire's not like that. She's nice. She likes my robot drawings, and she's helping with Mom's book. And a pause. No, I don't want a different best friend. Another knock. Jack opened it to find Clare looking uncharacteristically disheveled. You shouldn't be here, he said, but stepped aside to let her in. I had to come. My family's... Lawyers, the board members, they're trying to spin this into some sort of midlife crisis. But they don't understand. She moved closer. Jack, what's happening between us is complicated, he finished. And now it's hurting Tommy. We can protect him. My PR team, that's exactly it. Jack ran a hand through his hair. PR teams. Lawyers, damage control. This is your world, Claire. Tommy and I don't belong in it. You belong with me. She touched his cheek. Both of you. For a moment, Jack leaned into her hand. Then Tommy's door opened. Claire, the boy ran to hug her. Are you still coming to my robotics presentation next week? Jack watched Claire's face light up as she hugged his son. She belonged here, in their tiny apartment, in their simple life, but the world wouldn't let her stay. Someone like her could never be happy with someone like him. The Gala, he said quietly. I don't think we should... Dad. No, Tommy protested. My whole robotics team will be there. Claire straightened, her CEO mask sliding back into place. The car will still come at 6:30. Your choice whether to be in it. She kissed Tommy's forehead and left before Jack could respond. Through the window, he watched her slide into her waiting car. The tabloid lay on his kitchen table. There, grainy photos, like glimpses into a dream that had almost felt possible. At 6:15, Jack stood before his mirror, the new suit feeling like armor for a battle he wasn't sure how to fight. Tommy was already dressed, excitement warring with worry on his face as he clutched his robotics presentation folder. We're still going, right, Dad? The question hung in the air as Jack's phone buzzed again. Another message from Claire's lawyer, this time about a potential trust fund for Tommy's education. The thought made his stomach turn. Not because it wasn't generous, but because it meant their simple life was already transforming into something complex and conditional. Just fixing my tie, buddy. But his hands shook on the silk. The black car arrived precisely at 6:30, but it wasn't the usual driver. Diana, Claire's assistant, stepped out. Claire's been detained at an emergency board meeting, she explained. As they drove, the Singapore merger is threatening to fall apart. Some board members are questioning her recent priorities. Jack watched the city lights blur past, each one taking them further from their familiar world. Tommy pressed his face against the window as they entered the wealthy part of town, where mansions sat behind iron gates. The science center had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers hung where educational displays usually stood. Men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns mingled among the exhibits. Tommy's robotics team wore matching blue blazers, looking both excited and overwhelmed. "Jack! Tommy!" Dr. Rodriguez waved them over. "Just in time, the demonstration starts in 20 minutes. But before Tommy could join his team, an elegant older woman intercepted them. Her resemblance to Claire was unmistakable. "So," Claire's mother said, her smile not reaching her eyes, "you're the mechanic my daughter's throwing away her reputation for." "Mrs. Bennett," Jack started. "Claire's always had a weakness for charity cases," she continued, glancing at Tommy's presentation folder. "But this little infatuation has gone far enough. The board's preparing a no-confidence vote. Her father's threatening to sell his shares. We never asked for—" "Of course you didn't. You just accepted everything she offered. The garage investment, the science programs, the suits." Her voice dripped disdain. "Tell me, what's your endgame? Marriage? A settlement?" "Mom!" Claire's voice cut through the tension. She looked stunning in a midnight blue gown, but her face was tight with stress. "That's enough. The Singapore investors are threatening." "To walk," her mother hissed. "Everything you've built." "I said enough." Claire moved to stand between her mother and Jack, but the damage was done. "Tommy," Jack said quietly, "go with Dr. Rodriguez. It's time for your presentation." "But—" "Go, buddy. Make us proud." Once Tommy was out of earshot, Jack turned to Claire. "Your mother's right. We're costing you too much." "Jack, no. The board will come around. The merger will fail if you keep associating with us." He stepped back. "I won't be the reason you lose everything you've worked for." "You're not listening." Claire reached for him. "You and Tommy are more important than your company, your family, the thousands of jobs that depend on that merger." Jack's voice was gentle. "No, we're not. And we shouldn't be." Across the room, Tommy was setting up his presentation, sneaking worried glances their way. Jack remembered Sarah in her final days, making him promise to give their son the best life possible. This wasn't it. Being gossiped about, pulled between worlds, used as ammunition in corporate power plays. "I love you." Claire's whisper caught him off guard. "Both of you. Isn't that worth fighting for?" Jack's heart cracked. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it just hurts the people we're trying to protect. He pulled 2 concert tickets from his pocket, meant to be a surprise for after the gala. Claire's eyes filled with tears as he set them on a nearby table. "Tommy has 5 minutes left in his presentation," he said. "I'll wait in the car. Let him finish. Let him have this one last moment. Then tell him sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices." "Jack, please." But he was already walking away, his new suit feeling like borrowed skin. Through the glass doors, he could hear Tommy beginning his presentation, his young voice strong and clear despite everything. In the car, Diana watched him in the rearview mirror. "She'll never forgive you for this." "Good," Jack said quietly. "That will make it easier for her to let us go." Outside, the city sparkled with possibilities that no longer belonged to them. Jack loosened his tie, remembering Claire's fingers straightening it just days ago. Sometimes the bravest thing a hero could do was walk away. The week after the gala felt like moving through fog. Jack threw himself into work, taking every extra shift the garage offered. The new equipment Claire had brought sat mostly untouched, too painful a reminder of what they'd lost. Tommy hadn't spoken much since that night. He'd won first place in the robotics demonstration, but the trophy sat in his closet, unwrapped. Each morning, he checked his phone for messages from the science center that wouldn't come. "You did the right thing," Mike said, watching Jack rebuild an engine for the 3rd time. "Can't mix oil and water." But the garage felt empty without Claire's surprise visits, without Tommy doing homework in the corner while waiting for his robotics class. Even Rico had stopped telling jokes, sensing the heavy silence that had settled over everything. Across town, Claire sat in her corner office, staring at profit projections that should have made her happy. The Singapore merger was back on track. The board had withdrawn their concerns. Her mother was pleased. She was miserable. "The Bennett industry stock is up 12 points, Diana reported, and the Science Center board approved the new children's wing." Claire touched the repaired silk scarf she still wore. "As Tommy's robotics team, you asked me not to give you updates." Diana's voice softened. But if you want to know... No. Claire straightened papers that were already straight. Jack was right. Clean break is better. But her heart wasn't listening. Every car repair bill made her wonder if Jack was the mechanic. Every child's laugh reminded her of Tommy's excitement over robots. The children's book publishers still called about Sarah's illustrations, not knowing she'd lost the right to make that dream come true. At home, Jack found Tommy sitting in the kitchen, Sarah's sketchbook open before him. "I could still color them," Tommy said quietly, "even if Claire can't help publish it." Jack sat beside his son, looking at Sarah's delicate drawings. "Your mom would love that. She would have loved Claire too." Tommy's voice cracked, "like I did." Jack pulled his son close, feeling tears soak his shirt. "I know, buddy, I loved her too." "Then why?" "Because sometimes loving someone means making sure they can keep being who they're meant to be." Jack struggled to find words an 8-year-old could understand. "Claire's meant to run her company, help thousands of people. We were making that harder. She didn't care about that stuff, but she should." Jack's voice was gentle. "And someday she'll be grateful we let her go." Later that night, after Tommy was asleep, Jack found the contract from Claire's competitors in his drawer. The offer to buy out the garage still stood. One signature, and they could move away, start fresh somewhere the newspapers wouldn't follow. His phone lit up. Claire's number. His heart stumbled, but he let it go to voicemail. They'd made their choice. Better to let the wound heal clean. In her empty mansion, Claire listened to Jack's voicemail greeting for the 4th time that night. She'd had speeches prepared, about love being worth any cost, about Tommy's future, about second chances. But Jack's words at the gala haunted her. Sometimes love isn't enough. She'd spent her life believing anything could be fixed with enough money, enough influence, enough determination. Now she sat alone in her success, understanding finally that some things couldn't be bought or managed or controlled. The next morning, Jack arrived at the garage early. Tommy had asked to stay with his grandparents for the weekend, the first time he'd ever made that request. The empty chair where he usually did homework seemed to mock Jack's choices. A small package sat on his workbench. Inside, he found Tommy's robotics trophy and a note in Claire's elegant handwriting. "He earned this. Don't let our ending dim his light." Jack placed the trophy on the bench, letting morning sunlight catch its edges. Somewhere in the city, Claire was probably in another merger meeting, being exactly who she needed to be. And here he was, being a father, a mechanic, a man who had touched something magical and had the strength to let it go. Sometimes love wasn't about holding on. Sometimes it was about making sure the people you loved could fly, even if it meant watching them soar away. "From you." Tommy sat at his desk, surrounded by colored pencils and crumpled drafts. The letter had to be perfect. He'd been working on it all weekend at his grandparents' house, trying to find the right words. "Dear Claire, I know Dad says grown-ups sometimes have to make hard choices, but I think sometimes grown-ups make things harder than they need to be. Mum used to say that. She said Dad worked too hard because he was scared of needing help. I colored one of Mum's drawings, the one with the little robot learning to fly. I used the colors she told me about when she was sick. Blue for courage, yellow for hope, red for love. Dad says we can't send you Mom's book anymore, but I thought maybe you'd like this one page. Dad misses you. He thinks I don't notice, but I see him fixing cars with the special tools you bought, then staying late to do everything the old way instead. Like he's punishing himself. The garage is different now. Nobody laughs anymore. Rico tried to tell a joke yesterday but stopped halfway through because Dad looked so sad. I miss our robotics talks. Dr. Rodriguez says I can still come to classes, but it's not the same without you explaining things. Dad says you're doing important work, helping lots of people. But weren't you helping people when you were with us too? Mom's last drawing in her book was about how love is bigger than fear. I don't think she finished the story, but I think I know how it ends. The robot learns that being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. Please don't let Dad be brave alone anymore. Love, Tommy P.S. I put the drawing in an envelope with this letter. The robot's wings are red because Mum said love helps us fly. The letter found its way to Claire's desk on a Tuesday morning. She sat in her sleek office, holding Tommy's colored drawing, with trembling hands. Sarah's delicate lines, paired with her son's careful coloring, told a story of hope and healing that no corporate merger could match. Diana found her there, tears falling on the robot's red wings. The board meeting starts in 5 minutes, Diana said softly. They're finalizing the Singapore terms. Claire touched the colored drawing. Cancel it. What? Cancel everything? Claire stood, suddenly energized. Get me the children's book division on the phone and find out if Mike's garage is still using our new diagnostic system. Claire, Diana hesitated. Jack was pretty clear about... Jack was wrong. Claire carefully placed Tommy's drawing in her portfolio. And I was wrong to let him be wrong. The merger will still be there tomorrow. Claire grabbed her coat. Some things are more important than mergers. Across town, Jack was teaching Tommy basic engine repair, trying to fill the void left by robotics classes. The garage door opened, sending a shaft of sunlight across their workspace. Tommy. Claire's voice was soft but sure. Your robot's wings are perfect. They turned to find her holding his colored drawing, her eyes bright with tears and determination. Claire! Tommy launched himself at her. Jack straightened slowly. We agreed. No, you decided. Claire handed him Tommy's letter. Read it. Really read it. As Jack's eyes moved over his son's words, Claire continued. You were right about one thing. Love sometimes means letting people be who they're meant to be. But Jack, she touched his hand. Did you ever consider that maybe this is exactly who I'm meant to be? Not just a CEO, but someone who loves a mechanic who fixes silk scarves, and his brilliant son who colors robots with his mother's favorite colors. Tommy looked between them, hope dawning on his face. The board, Jack started, can either accept that I'm a better CEO when I'm happy, or find someone else to run their merger. Claire's voice held no doubt. I've spent my life building things, Jack. Let me help build this too, whatever this is between us. No more running away. No more brave sacrifices. She pulled out a folder. Sarah's book. The publishers want to do a special edition, original illustrations colored by her son, proceeds to children's cancer research, but only if you both want it. Jack looked at his son, seeing Sarah's gentle wisdom shining in Tommy's eyes. Then he looked at Claire, standing in his worn-down garage like it was exactly where she belonged. Mum's last drawing, Tommy said quietly, about love being bigger than fear. I think she was right. Jack reached for Claire's hand, feeling the walls he'd built crumbling at last. Sometimes love wasn't about letting go. Sometimes it was about holding on tight and building something new together. 3 weeks after Tommy's letter changed everything, the garage hummed with new energy. Jack stood with Claire at his workbench, reviewing plans for what they'd started calling the Bridge Project. So the community center takes the East Wing. Claire traced the blueprint. Free automotive classes for local kids, basic maintenance workshops for seniors, job training programs. And the robotics lab connects here, Jack pointed. Tommy's already recruiting kids from his school for the first class. The idea had come to them gradually, a way to merge their worlds instead of choosing between them. Mike's garage would expand, but not into a soulless chain. Instead, they were building something unique, a place where engineering met education, where mechanics and robotics lived side by side. The board actually loves it, Claire smiled. They're calling it innovative community integration and grassroots technical education. Plus, the tax benefits don't hurt. And your mother? Still horrified, Claire laughed. But Dad's intrigued. He wants to meet Tommy after seeing his robotics presentations. As if summoned, Tommy burst through the door with Rico, both carrying stacks of flyers. We finished the design! Tommy waved a paper proudly. Look! The flyer showed a robot and a car working together with the text, Morrison Bennett Community Engineering Center, where future meets future. The robot had distinctive red wings. Perfect, Claire hugged him. Ready to present it at the community meeting tonight. Tommy's face lit up. Since their reconciliation, he'd blossomed into a natural bridge between their two worlds, equally comfortable explaining engines to rich kids and robots to garage regulars. Ms. Chen from the children's publisher is coming too, he reminded them. She wants to see the final colors for Mom's book. Jack watched his son dash off to arrange his presentation materials, marveling at how naturally he adapted to change. The past weeks had taught Jack something about adaptation too. Still scared? Claire asked softly, reading his mind as she often did. Terrified, he admitted. But Mom's last drawing was right. Love is bigger than fear. The community meeting exceeded their expectations. The local auto workers' union pledged support for the training programs. 3 tech companies offered internship partnerships. Even Claire's mother, who came to observe, wrote a check for the children's section of the library they planned to include. Miss Chen cried when Tommy showed her his colored versions of Sarah's illustrations. The story works perfectly now, she said. A robot learning that real flight comes from helping others find their wings. Later that night, after Tommy was asleep, Jack and Claire sat on his small balcony. The city lights seemed to mirror the stars above, as if heaven and earth were finally in alignment. The Singapore merger closed today, Claire mentioned casually. Stocks up 30 points. Congratulations. Jack meant it. He was learning that Claire's success didn't diminish their relationship. It was part of who she was, just as grease under his fingernails was part of him. They want me to fly out next week to meet the new partners. She hesitated. I thought maybe you and Tommy would come with me. There's an amazing robotics facility there, and I know a few mechanics who could teach you about luxury Asian imports. Jack tensed for a moment, old fears flickering. Then he remembered Tommy's letter. Grown-ups make things harder than they need to be. I'll need to renew our passports, he said, and someone to watch the garage expansion while we're gone. Already talked to Mike and Rico. They're excited to run point on the construction. She squeezed his hand. We're building something amazing here, Jack. Not just the center, but us. This family. Family. The word settled warm in his chest. He thought of Sarah, wondering if somehow she'd known they'd need Claire someday. The last page of her book showed the robot finding its home among unlikely friends. A bird, a car, a shooting star. Different kinds of flight coming together in perfect harmony. Tommy asked me something interesting today, Claire said. He wanted to know if he could call me Mom someday. Not to replace Sarah, she added quickly, but in addition, he said his heart had room for both. Jack pulled her close, throat tight with emotion. What did you tell him? That I'd be honored. But only when we're all ready. She looked up at him. Are we ready, Jack? Below them, the city pulsed with life. In Tommy's room, Sarah's illustrated robot spread its red wings on the wall, watching over their son's dreams. And here, on a small balcony between Earth and stars, a mechanic and a CEO held each other, proving that love could bridge any distance. Yeah, Jack whispered, finally understanding what Sarah's last drawing had tried to tell him. We're ready to fly. The Singapore trip changed everything. Though not in the ways they expected, Tommy charmed the international robotics team with his knowledge of Japanese anime. Jack discovered he had a natural talent for explaining complex engineering concepts across language barriers. And Claire, watching them both, made a decision that would reshape their future. I'm stepping down as CEO, she announced over breakfast in their hotel suite, taking a position as Director of Innovation instead. Jack nearly choked on his coffee. Claire, you can't. I can and I am. Her eyes sparkled. The board's already approved it. I'll focus on special projects like our community center. More hands-on work, less corporate politics, more time for what matters. Tommy looked up from his robot designs. Does this mean you'll be at more of my science fairs? It means I'll be at all of them. Claire ruffled his hair. and helping more kids like you discover their passion for engineering. Back in Seattle, the Morrison Bennett Center was taking shape. The old garage had been transformed, its industrial charm preserved but enhanced. Solar panels gleamed on the roof, powering both the mechanical lifts and the robotics lab. The community classroom buzzed with activity as Rico taught basic car maintenance to eager students. "Check this out." Tommy dragged them to the children's corner, where Sarah's illustrations lined the walls. The book had become a local bestseller, its message of finding family in unexpected places resonating far beyond their community. Jack watched a young girl trace the robot's red wings, her eyes wide with wonder. "My daddy fixes cars too," she told Tommy. "Can I learn about robots like you?" "That's why we built this place," Tommy explained, with 8-year-old wisdom. "So everyone can learn everything." The center quickly became a model for similar projects across the country. Clare's corporate experience merged perfectly with Jack's practical knowledge, creating a blueprint for community-based technical education that others wanted to follow. But the real magic happened in their private moments. Sunday mornings making pancakes in Jack's apartment, though Clare's mansion stood ready whenever they wanted it. Tommy teaching them both to play the video games Dr. Rodriguez had recommended for hand-eye coordination. Family dinners where grease-stained work clothes mixed with designer suits, and no one cared about the difference. "We should make it official," Clare said one evening after Tommy had gone to bed. They sat on their balcony, their special place for important conversations. The center, the family, all of it. Jack turned to find her holding a simple ring. Not a massive diamond, but a band of titanium with delicate gears etched into its surface. "I had it made from the door handle of the car you pulled me from," she explained. The metalworker said titanium's nearly impossible to work with, but that seemed appropriate for us. Jack stared at the ring, seeing their whole story carved in its surface. "Aren't I supposed to be the one asking? When have we ever done things the traditional way?" She smiled. "Besides, Tommy helped design it, said it needed gears to represent how we all work together now." From his bedroom, they heard Tommy's voice. "Say yes already, Dad." Laughing, Jack pulled Clare close. "You sure about this? Marrying a mechanic, living above a garage?" "I've never been more sure of anything." She slipped the ring onto his finger. "Though technically, you'll be marrying the director of innovation. The mechanic part is just a bonus." The ring fit perfectly, like everything else about their unlikely family. Through the workshop windows below, they could see Sarah's illustrated robot watching over the children's corner, its red wings spread in eternal flight. "Think she'd approve?" Jack asked softly. She already did. Clare touched the book displayed prominently on their shelf. "She wrote our story before we knew it. A robot learning to fly, finding family in unexpected places, love building bridges across different worlds." Tommy appeared in his pajamas, unable to contain his excitement any longer. "Does this mean I can call you Mom now?" Clare opened her arms, and Tommy rushed into them. Jack held them both, marveling at how naturally they fit together, 3 different paths converging into one. "Welcome home," he whispered, and felt them both smile. Through the open window drifted the sounds of their center, students learning, engines humming, robots whirring to life. Music from a world they'd built together, a symphony of possibilities they were still discovering. Above them, stars twinkled like distant gears in heaven's vast machine. Below, their family's story continued to unfold, proving that sometimes the most unlikely combinations created the strongest bonds. Love, after all, was the ultimate bridge builder. The headlines were inevitable. Tech heiress trades boardroom for garage, and modern fairy tale, billionaire and mechanic to wed. But this time, the stories were different. The cynicism had been replaced by something closer to admiration. "Look at this one," Rico said, holding up a business magazine. The cover showed Claire in work clothes, helping Tommy with a robot while Jack explained an engine diagnostic. "They're calling it the Morrison Bennett model. reimagining community education. Even Claire's mother had come around, though she still insisted on planning an elaborate engagement party. "If my daughter's going to marry a mechanic," she announced, "we'll at least celebrate in style." The party merged their worlds in unexpected ways. Venture capitalists discussed hybrid engines with auto workers. Society ladies learned about robotics from Tommy's enthusiastic teammates. Dr. Rodriguez demonstrated prosthetic limbs for fascinated board members. "Your mother's trying very hard," Jack murmured to Claire as they watched the unlikely mingling. "She is," Claire smiled, "though I think Tommy's the one who really won her over. She's already talking about teaching him proper table etiquette for board meetings." The children's book had taken off, spawning a whole series about the little robot finding its way. Parents wrote letters about how the story helped their kids cope with loss, with change, with blended families. Sarah's art, brought to life by Tommy's careful coloring, spoke to something universal. Local news crews became regular visitors to the center, documenting its impact. They filmed seniors learning basic car maintenance, kids building their first robots, unemployed workers training for new careers. Each story highlighted the same theme: bridges being built, lives being changed. "But what about the shareholders?" a reporter asked Claire during one interview. "Surely they're concerned about your new direction." "Our stock is up 40% since we launched the community initiative," Claire answered. "Turns out doing good can be good business. We're creating the next generation of engineers, mechanics, and innovators. What shareholder wouldn't want that?" The publicity brought unexpected opportunities. Other cities wanted to replicate their model. Major tech companies offered partnerships. Universities proposed research collaborations. "We're going to need a bigger garage," Jack joked, as they reviewed expansion plans. "Already handled." Claire spread out blueprints. "The warehouse next door is ours. Room for 10 more training bays, an expanded robotics lab, and a proper auditorium for presentations." Tommy looked up from his latest project, a robot that could perform basic car maintenance. "Can we add a cafe? Ms. Rodriguez says she'll teach cooking classes if we have a kitchen." "Add it to the plans, buddy." Jack watched his son sketch his ideas. "Though maybe we should finish the wedding preparations first." The wedding plans had taken on a life of their own. Claire's mother wanted the social event of the season. The center's students begged to help. Tommy had appointed himself chief of robot ring-bearer design, but amid the chaos, they maintained their balance: morning coffee on the balcony, family dinners where they shared their days, weekend projects in the garage. Their love story had become something bigger than themselves, but they kept its heart intimate and real. One evening, a letter arrived from a teenage girl in Boston. She'd read about them and included a drawing, a car and a robot holding hands, forming a bridge between two different worlds. "Sometimes," she wrote, "we need stories like yours to show us what's possible." Claire hung the drawing in their office, next to Sarah's original sketches. The past and future, art and engineering, love and ambition, all flowing together in perfect harmony. "Ready for all this?" she asked Jack as they watched Tommy demonstrate his maintenance robot for a group of wide-eyed kids. Jack touched his gear-etched ring, remembering a burning car and a choice made in an instant that had changed everything. "With you too?" He pulled her close, ready for anything. Through the window, Seattle's rain had turned to sunshine, painting their expanded center in shades of promise. Inside, the future was already taking shape, one bridge at a time. 1 year to the day after the accident, Jack stood at the exact spot where his life had changed. The skid marks had long since faded, but he could still see it all. The flipped Mercedes, the flames, the moment that connected his world to Claire's. "Thought I'd find you here." Claire's voice came from behind him. She wore her silk scarf, the one he'd repaired, despite the warm spring morning. "Just thinking about choices," Jack said, as she slipped her hand into his. "If I'd been running late that day, or taken a different route, but you didn't." She squeezed his hand. "You were exactly where you needed to be." They had a busy day ahead. The Morrison Bennett Center was hosting its first graduation ceremony. 20 students completing their technical certification program, another 30 finishing robotics training. Tommy had insisted on designing special medals for everyone. "Remember what you said that night at the gala?" Claire asked. "About love not being enough?" Jack winced. "I was wrong. We both were. We thought we had to choose between worlds instead of building a bridge." She touched her scarf. "Speaking of building things, Tommy has a surprise for you at the center." They drove back in comfortable silence. The morning sun caught Claire's engagement ring, sending tiny reflections dancing across the dashboard. Jack's matching gear-etched band felt right at home on his mechanic's hands. The center's parking lot was unusually full for a Saturday morning. Jack recognized cars belonging to Sarah's parents, his garage crew, Claire's board members, and various students. "What's going on?" Claire just smiled and led him inside. The main workshop had been transformed. White chairs filled the space between the lifts. Fairy lights twined around tool cabinets. And at the front, Tommy stood in a suit, practically bouncing with excitement. "Surprise!" Their son ran to them. "You said you wanted a small wedding, so I organized one. Today." Jack stared at the setup, then at Claire. "You knew about this." "Tommy planned everything," she said proudly, "with a little help from the robotics team." On cue, a small procession of robots rolled down the aisle, each carrying a different component of the ceremony. One held flowers, another the rings. A particularly sophisticated model projected a hologram of Sarah's robot illustrations on the walls. "The graduates agreed to delay their ceremony until this afternoon," Tommy explained. "And Claire's mom, actually cried when I suggested having it here instead of some fancy hotel." Jack knelt to his son's level. "You did all this?" Tommy nodded. "Mom's book says home is where your heart builds its strongest bridges. This place is our bridge. It should be where you get married." Claire wiped tears from her eyes. Out of the mouths of babes, their guests began filing in. Rico and Mike in suits that still somehow had grease stains. Dr. Rodriguez and the robotics team. Claire's parents looking surprisingly comfortable, on chairs between tool chests. Sarah's parents bringing her framed illustrations to display. "One more surprise," Tommy said, pulling out a familiar sketchbook. "Look what I found in Mom's notes." The last page of Sarah's book had always seemed unfinished, but in the margins she'd written instructions for the final illustration. A robot. A bird and a shooting star joining wings to form a bridge between heaven and earth. Below, in her delicate handwriting, "For Tommy, someday you'll understand that families are built in many ways, all of them magical." "She knew," Jack whispered. "Somehow she knew you'd find us." Claire touched the sketch gently. "She made sure you'd be ready when I did." Tommy had colored the final illustration. The robot's wings were red for love, the birds blue for courage, the stars yellow for hope. Together, they formed a rainbow bridge across the page. "Ready to get married?" Tommy asked. "I programmed the robots to play the wedding march and everything." Jack looked around at their unlikely wedding venue. Toolboxes served as flower stands. Engine hoists held curtains of fairy lights. The air smelled of metal and motor oil and possibility. "Almost ready," Claire said. She pulled out a small package. "Just need something old, something new." Inside was a leather wallet, the one from the crash, carefully restored. "You kept it," Jack said softly. "Of course." She pressed it into his hands. "It's what led me to you." As their guests settled in and Tommy's robots took their positions, Jack thought about choices and chances, about burning cars and broken scarves, about bridges built between worlds, about love that grew in the most unexpected places. "Sarah would love this," Claire whispered, reading his mind as she often did. Jack watched Tommy directing his robot orchestra, saw the joy on their son's face, felt the warmth of their combined families filling the space that had become so much more than just a garage. "She does," he said simply. "She gave us her blessing. A long time ago." The robots began to play, and two worlds became one beneath the light of Sarah's illustrated stars. 5 years after a burning car brought them together, The Morrison Bennett Center had become something even Clare's ambitious plans hadn't envisioned. What started as a bridge between two worlds had grown into a landmark of possibility, spawning similar centers across the country. Tommy, now 13, stood at the podium of their packed auditorium, presenting his latest innovation, a hybrid system combining traditional auto mechanics with advanced robotics. "The idea came from watching Dad and Mom work," he explained to the audience. "Sometimes the best solutions come from connecting things that seem different." In the front row, Jack and Clare held hands, wedding rings glinting. Jack had long since stopped being surprised when people recognized him as both master mechanic and the husband of the famous Clare Bennett. Clare had stopped counting the raised eyebrows when she showed up to board meetings with grease on her designer clothes. "They're calling it the Tommy Morrison Grant," Clare whispered, showing Jack the letter that had arrived that morning. A major tech foundation wanted to fund similar programs nationwide, named after the boy who'd helped build the first bridge. After the presentation, they walked through their expanded facility. The original garage was now a historical exhibit, preserved exactly as it had been when their story began. Sarah's book art covered the walls, her robot illustrations inspiring each new generation of students. "Ms. Rodriguez says I can teach the junior robotics class next semester," Tommy told them over dinner in their rooftop apartment. They'd added 2 stories above the center, combining Clare's love of luxury with Jack's need to stay close to the garage. "Just don't forget about your other classes," Clare reminded him, ever the second mom. "Already done, and I colored 3 more pages for the new edition of Mom's book." The book had become a series, each volume telling stories about building bridges between different worlds. Tommy's coloring brought Sarah's vision to life, while Clare's publishing connections had turned it into a global phenomenon. "Your mom would be so proud of you," Jack said softly. "Both of them are," Tommy replied, with the simple wisdom that still caught them off guard sometimes. Later that night, Jack and Clare stood on their balcony, watching the city lights. The T spot where they'd first met was visible in the distance, marked now by a small memorial garden where other families came to reflect on life's unexpected turns. "Remember how scared we were," Clare mused, "of what people would think, of losing our separate worlds. Now look at us." Jack pulled her close, teaching the world that different doesn't mean distant. Below them, the evening robotics class was letting out. Students of all ages streamed through the courtyard, some heading to their expensive cars, others to the bus stop. All of them changed by what they'd learned about bridges between worlds. "Tommy's scholarship program is going to change lives," Clare said, "just like Sarah's books already have." They'd use the proceeds from the book series to establish a foundation, helping other families build bridges across life's divisions. Every year they added new programs, new opportunities, new ways to connect worlds that seemed far apart. The scarf that had once torn now hung framed in their living room, its mended seam a testament to the beauty of imperfect repairs. Beside it, the wallet from the crash held a place of honor, its burned leather a reminder of how close they'd come to missing their chance. "Think we'll ever stop being a news story?" Jack asked, noting a reporter filming outside their gate. "Probably not," Clare smiled. "People need stories like ours. Remind them that love is the ultimate bridge builder." From Tommy's room came the sound of him video chatting with his robotics team, planning their next innovation. He'd grown into an extraordinary young man, carrying Sarah's artistic soul, Jack's mechanical genius, and Clare's business instincts. A family photo hung above their fireplace, Jack in his work clothes, Clare in a business suit, Tommy surrounded by his robots, and Sarah's illustrated characters watching over them all. Different pieces of a puzzle that formed a perfect picture. "We should visit the crash site tomorrow," Clare said softly. "Leave some flowers. Say thank you." Jack nodded, understanding. Every twist in their path, even the painful ones, had led them here. To this family, this purpose, this love that built bridges strong enough to carry any weight. Above them, stars twinkled like distant gears in heaven's machine. Below, their center hummed with the energy of dreams being built. And here, in the space between, a mechanic and a CEO held each other close, grateful for burning cars and broken scarves, for second chances and new beginnings, for love that knew no boundaries, and a family built on bridges of the heart.